This is Profiles in Risk. Hosted by Nick Lamparelli. Every week, we interview those who risk life, limb, fortunes, career, and reputation, and those who work behind the scenes who look to protect and enlighten us about risk. You can find the show notes and other insurance-related content at insnerds.com. That's INSNERDS.com. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to Profiles in Risk. I am your host, Nick Lamparelli. Today, I am pleased to introduce Chris Stanley. Chris is an independent appraiser, and when he's not doing that, he is helping others build their independent adjusters' careers as founder of IAPath, a company whose goal is to make it easier to become an independent auto appraiser and adjuster. And when he's not doing that, when he's not helping people get well-paying careers, Chris is also the host of the Independent Adjusters Podcast. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor to have you on. We've been connected for quite some time, and we are now in February, which is Insurance Careers Month. So one of the first people I thought of hosting for Insurance Careers Month was you, because you are actually helping people build a career as an independent adjuster. So I'm going to start off first. What is the difference between an appraiser, independent appraiser, and an independent adjuster?
All right, Nick. So this one, I get lots of mixed responses from people who are smarter than me. But my way that I explain it to my students and to people who are just getting introduced into the industry is I make it as simple as possible. And really, when you break it down, the difference between an appraiser and adjuster is really who's making the final decision in issuing the check. So an appraiser is authorized to go look at a vehicle, maybe make negotiations on behalf of the insurance company, but it falls always to an adjuster who is licensed in the state to issue that check. And so if you can just kind of separate your mind out and go, okay, what's an auto adjuster or auto appraiser? That's really the difference. One's the final decision maker issuing that check.
I always thought they were one and the same. So right away.
They can be.
Question, I've already learned something. Okay. So I've read your backstory. There's a great story there. I can't think of the right word for it, but how did you get into this? How did you become an IA?
Well, I was like many young people. I had not a great, bright future ahead of me. I was married to my lovely wife, which was my only future, and I was working at Walmart distribution. So you imagine that job that you're like, this is the best I'll ever get. I'm going to make, I think I maxed out my pay after 6 years there at like, $17 an hour, which was good money. And I thought that maybe one day I'll be a supervisor, right? One day, maybe I'll climb the corporate ladder at Walmart or something. I had no inkling to go anywhere else. Well, my father-in-law kind of grabbed me and near forced me. Like, you're married to my daughter. I want to give you a career. And he was a body shop manager and body man for 20-something years. And he had switched to being an IA. And he was in the transition of actually switching to be an IA. And he said, I'll train you. Come work with me 4 days a week. You work the warehouse job 3 days a week, 12 hours a day, and then we'll give you a career, basically. And I'm like, Mark, that's my father-in-law, I don't even know how to change my own oil. I don't do anything to do with cars. What do you mean you're going to teach me how to look at vehicles that are damaged and write estimates? This sounds boring, but okay. And that's kind of how it started. And I trained with him for 6 months without pay, helping him build his IA business up and learning from him. And he just poured in his 20 plus years of knowledge into me. And then he hasn't stopped. He constantly is pouring into me. But that was the origin, so to speak.
Well, I think the word I was looking for was passionate. You're incredibly passionate about it, so much so that you have a training career. But in order for you to be passionate about it, you must think it's a very attractive career. So what is it about it that a lot of folks in our pre-conversation, I kind of assumed it would be younger folks, but you said no, there's a lot of older folks, looking for a second career. They're into it as well. What makes the IA field so attractive?
Well, hands down, the thing that resonates with almost everybody and resonated with me initially was the freedom that being an independent adjuster offers. Now, if you don't know what an independent adjuster is and what's different than a staff adjuster, say at an insurance company, is an independent adjuster is truly a small business owner. They're contracted by insurance companies on a per claim basis, or through a big firm, another independent adjusting firm, on a per claim basis. So really you almost have to have the mindset the same as a small business owner, the same as an entrepreneur. And it's that freedom, that challenge, the building something, I think, that makes it so attractive. But you are in charge of your own schedule to some extent. But as a business owner, Nick, just as I do, yeah, sure, we're in charge of our schedule, but that doesn't mean we work any less. It actually means we usually work more. So we've kind of coined the term of what a IA can truly be, which is an adjusterpreneur. Okay, you combine adjuster and entrepreneur, and you just come away with this hybrid, which is an independent adjuster.
I'm writing this down, adjusterpreneur. I like that. I thought you were going to say the number one thing. I almost interrupted you. The number one thing that people are focused on is the money.
It's not true. Now, the money can be good, but if you're taking any career, not just adjusting, purely off of monetary gain, you're going to have a letdown, no matter what it is. I've made great money as an independent adjuster. You can make six figures. People hear the glory stories of Hurricane Katrina and making tens of thousands of dollars in a month or two. Well, that's not the reality for everyone, and that's not the reality of where you start. But it's just like any business. You start and you build clientele, and it takes time, and it takes getting good at your craft.
Good. It's good advice, actually. What lines do you specialize in, and why?
Well, you can take away the S in lines and just go, what line? I do auto basically only. I was blessed to have a great path in as an independent adjuster, and that's why I called it the IA path, which was I started doing auto damage daily collision claims in a coverage area, similar to a staff auto damage appraiser, but for independent companies. But I eventually moved on to catastrophe and operations management and things of that nature, but it never took me away from auto. Every time I tried to break out of auto, I got sucked back in. So I've never really done much other than auto. So you can just say, what line do you specialize in? It's auto. And that's one thing that's a little bit different for me than a lot of people is, for some reason, I've never broke out of that.
Yeah. Is part of that auto is just such a big line, one of the biggest markets in the world, and the claims frequency is so large as well?
Yes and no. For me, sometimes it was apathy, right? Where I just didn't want to get uncomfortable and go learn property maybe. When I'm finally hit a comfort zone and life's stable, and as an independent adjuster, as a business owner, that's rare, right? So when you have those moments, you're not thinking, let me jump off this nice, steady boat. You're like, oh, let me take a break. But then when the storms hit, my network was built in auto. So that's really probably the reason why, is it was so heavily ingrained into auto and not into any lines and not into multiple companies who did other lines.
Yeah. So let's focus on the negative.
There's a lot.
Let's start there. You've had a lot of students come through your course. You've trained a lot. You've bumped into other adjusters. I'm sure you're part of trade associations and all of that. For those that don't succeed, what do they do wrong?
Well, in my book, The Hail Adjuster's Playbook, I actually have an entire chapter dedicated to this. And now it's actually mentioning about doing catastrophic work, which is picking up and traveling across the country, things like that. But to me, there's 5 things that will make you not make it as an independent adjuster. And it's not just in the catastrophe realm. It's in any facet of business really, or in independent adjusting, which is number one, they don't have enough startup cash. Okay, people think I'm going to become an independent adjuster, and they quit their job. They go take a class with some companies. They get a license. They show up for 2 days and get State Farm certified, and they think that there's going to be thousands of dollars shoved into their pocket upon arrival, and it just isn't the case. That's not how this industry works. So scratch that idea if you're listening right now. That is not how this works. Like I said, you're a business owner. You're building a business. So number two goes hand in hand with that. You have the wrong expectations. How long is this going to take? What is needed for me to actually succeed? Number three, people wait around, Nick, and I'm sure you've heard stories like this, and it probably drives you as insane as it does me, but people wait around hoping to catch their big break, whether it's in adjusting or not. And I call it waiting for the lottery ticket or the golden ticket. They're sitting there, they have an adjuster license in hand, and they're saying, okay, somebody's going to call me. And it's like, no. And if they do, you're like 997th on the list. You'll probably never get called again. So you have to actually be doing something. So that's number three. Number four is you won't survive those valleys. So for all the reasons listed above, when you have a dip in your work, or you have a dip in the storm season, if you're a hail adjuster or a storm chaser, you can't last to your next big earning potential. So that's number four. And then go right along with it all the way through. You're not controlling your expenses, because as an independent business owner, you can spend money on a lot of things you don't need. And if you go out to eat every time and have a steak dinner every night that you work because, I made $200 today, or if you're working catastrophe, I made $500 today, I can afford a steak dinner. You're not actually calculating the expenses that it costs to earn that money and when the next time you're going to earn that money is. And so it just becomes this huge snowball of bad expectations and bad money management.
I love three. You've heard of the ABCs of selling, always be closing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've converted that to the ABC actually stands for always be connecting.
Yep.
And the waiting
I think I've seen you say that, and I love that.
Yeah, the waiting around is incredibly frustrating for when I see it. It's one of the biggest issues I see with younger people as they come up. So connected to screens and phones that they won't call anyone, or they go to events and they sit on their phone. And I believe in the ABCs, like always be connecting. And for a small business owner, that's like prospecting. Like, constantly, you gotta go hunting. You need to go out and find your business. If you're just sitting there, you can forget about it. So I love that list. Now, are successful adjusterpreneurs, are they just doing the opposite of this, or is there other facets that make successful adjusters successful?
Well, you could kind of flip it on its head and just do the opposite, but I actually had the 5 things that you need to do. And when you go to my website, you'll see it at the very home page. But there's 5 things that I think you need to do, the 5 first steps. And it's number 1, you got to get a license. So everyone dreams of becoming an adjuster, and many times they'll wait to spend $300-$400 to get that first license in the class. And if you don't have a license, you're really hampered on what your potential is in the insurance industry, period, not just as an independent adjuster. So you got to start with at least getting the license. You got to be legal to do business. Okay. And then number 2 is the successful people. What you have to do is you have to get on a lot of rosters. Unlike it's actually probably really similar, Nick, if you're trying to get a new job at an insurance company, you don't apply to Geico. What do? You put resumes everywhere. Well, getting on a roster is similar to resumes for independent adjusters. You're on a list, in air quotes, but that doesn't mean you're going to get claims. So you got to have a lot of different companies you're working for, so you have the hope that you'll get a call to do a claim. Number 3, you got to get trained. So it sounds a little backwards, my order: license, rosters, trained. But to me, there's a lot of waiting in this game. So those rosters, once you get on them, you have time generally to get trained. So it's kind of a simultaneous task. Get on the rosters and get trained while you're going. You can do that, by having a mentor like I did. You can do it through my, websites like mine that help train you in actually how to do the work, but it's totally different from getting a license. It's not getting your license. You've already done that. Now it's getting trained on the actual work. So the ones who have been successful, they've gotten trained. They've learned their craft well enough to impress somebody when they get that opportunity from those rosters they applied for. And then you got to network. Like you were saying, always be connecting. Network. Once you're trained, people don't network too much before you're trained, because people will spot a fraud from a mile away. So you have to learn to speak the industry language to some extent to really network on a large scale. So I kind of leave that one. Once you start getting trained, that's really the great time to network. And then finally, you got to hustle. You can't wait for the ticket. You got to hustle. And that's, once again, goes back to that whole list. It's a whole list of things, but you just have to work at your business and work hard. Otherwise, you'll never be successful.
The getting a license part of it. So as I mentioned before we started recording, I have a friend who's looking to do a second career in this. And I know you have to get licensed state by state. Mm-hmm. There's like an art to that.
There can be.
Aren't there particular states where, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's sort of recommended that you get licensed there first?
Yeah. So how that works, and this is one of the most confusing parts for beginners, is you may be in one state and people are like, well, you should get a Texas license or you should get an Indiana license. Well, what you need to do is find out if your home state requires an adjuster license, because there are a certain number of states that don't. So if you're lucky enough to be in one of those states that don't require a license, you can go work tomorrow with zero experience if you can get somebody to take a chance on you in your hometown. But what you need to do then to travel and to really increase your resume and show that you're serious about the industry is you designate another state as your home licensed state if your state doesn't require one. So that's when Texas comes involved, and you can do it easily online, or you do Indiana is the quickest now, and they're just as easy online. So if you don't have a state license, and you can go to adjusterpro.com and look. If you don't, it doesn't require you to have a state license. You go to adjusterpro.com, click on your state, and just make a determination there. Hey, I need a license. I don't need a license. And if you don't need a license, get an Indiana license, because once you get certified and you pass your test, within 2-3 days, you'll have your adjuster license. And that's like rapid fire in the insurance industry.
Oh, that's actually really good to know. So with my licensing as a quote unquote producer, I had every state that I potentially do business in, I had to get a non-resident license.
Absolutely. Same thing in adjusting. Once you have one license, you can then reciprocate it to most states, and which means pay them their money and they'll recognize your Texas or Indiana license.
Is it as expensive as a producer's license? Because that could be thousands of dollars.
Yes. Generally, remember, we're talking very broad here. So if you're looking to work in your home state only, this is a very different conversation than if you're looking to compete on a national level with catastrophe companies. So if you're wanting to travel to Florida, Louisiana, Texas, you need to have a license in every state that requires it that you want to go work in. And sometimes there's emergency licenses available, but most companies tell you beef up your your licenses so your resume looks fatter. So we'll call you because you can work anywhere. But if you're just licensed to one state, you're kind of waiting for that ticket still, even with a license. You're waiting for that state to have a big enough event for you to get called. So it's two different conversations, though, really.
Sure. Are there any, from the licensing standpoint, any differences between auto or homeowners or other types of adjustment?
Yes. Some states actually have, like North Carolina has an motor vehicle damage appraiser's license, I think what it's called. And basically you pay them $120 and you don't even take a test. Oh, great. You can go look at wrecked vehicles. It's that crazy. Okay. But you're still not an adjuster. You can't issue a check, but you're now authorized to go look at a vehicle.
Like the appraiser.
Yeah, exactly. You're an appraiser. South Carolina has an appraiser's license that requires a test. And then there's crop licenses, and then there's the all lines, which is what most people get, is the Texas all lines, Indiana all lines. So there is some different lines, but generally what I tell people is just, if you're going to the States, and you're really serious, just go get your all lines. Just get that.
I think you sort of answered this one already, but what's the single biggest misunderstanding from newbies as they enter the field? Is it wads of cash in their pocket?
Well, that kind of, but really my biggest thing is the concept of that golden ticket, like we talked about, which is, and I like to explain it this way. Nick, if you want to become a baker, what do you got to do legally? You go get a business license. What do we do if we want to be an adjuster? We legally go get an adjuster license. And whatever else you need to do legally speaking, your car insurance, whatever the case may be for you or the baker. But once you have a business license and your insurance and all that, that doesn't mean anyone's going to come buy a cake from you. That doesn't mean anybody's going to give you claims to write. So it really doesn't mean that your cakes are any good if you're a baker, and it doesn't mean that your estimate writing as an adjuster is any good. So this whole waiting around, not getting trained, thinking that because I have a license, I should get work is just the biggest misunderstanding. And the second thing is really, it's not a misunderstanding, but it's something that people let hinder them from coming into the field, is they think that what their job is about estimates. It's about vehicles or it's about houses, and they're intimidated by that. But the number one thing to me that our job is about is it's about people. You don't want your IT guy inspecting a vehicle because he doesn't know how to talk with people. You need a personable person to go talk to that homeowner who's in distress or to that vehicle owner who's in distress. So just remember, it's not about vehicles. It's not about houses. It's about people. You can learn the rest of it. It's hard to learn how to deal with people if you don't have that in you.
Well, that gets into the next part of it, because I just think it's so important and just incredibly difficult, the soft skills element of communicating, selling yourself. So you had mentioned, you got to get on a roster, but that's just like one step. And even networking is just another step. How do you teach, folks that want to try to be successful here? How do you teach them to have the confidence to sell and market themselves, and, how to ask questions when prospecting? How do they get the claims? How do they get in front of the right person so that some kind of deal flow can come through their desk?
We kind of combined a lot of questions in that, but I think I can answer it. Number one, to me, you have to have confidence in yourself. And it's near impossible to have confidence in yourself if you believe you're a total fraud. If you think that you're going into an auto damage appraisal company or to an IA firm and you're reaching out to them and you don't even know how to write an estimate, you're not going to come across as confident, even via screen sources like texting and emailing and applications. There's just something different about the language we use when we're confident. So to me, number one, you just have to have that confidence. But how do you get that confidence is through training and knowing that you know enough. Because for me, what my father-in-law taught me over that 6 months, even when he let me go and he said, "You're ready, Chris, you can go. You've been training for 6 months." I'm like, I'm a fraud. I don't know enough. As business owners and as people in general, we feel that. We feel that, I can't even remember what they call it right now, but it's the imposter syndrome. There it is. The imposter syndrome, that we don't deserve to get claims. And if we believe that we don't know enough to get claims and we don't deserve to get any work, or we're not good enough, you're not going to come across as confident. But what my father-in-law taught me, number one phrase, my favorite thing to say to students now, is you got to fake it until you make it. But you got to have the confidence to actually talk the language, right? But you got to understand that everyone in life in general fakes it until they make it. So once you get trained up and you've been given all the information you possibly can, you then have to go out there and actually use that information in through that faking it till you make it. And you mentioned, what do I teach people to do to find business? Well, once you have that confidence, it becomes pretty easy. And, Nick, I don't know if you're ready for this, because this strategy can be used not only by any IA, but it can be used by anyone in the B2B industry.
I got my pen ready.
All right. It's going to blow your mind. You ready? It's called Google.
Whoa.
I mean, seriously, like, I have people, email me, Chris, how do I find auto damage appraisal companies? And I've even had people on screen share before, and I'll go to auto damage appraisal companies in Google. Like, bam, did you know those 10 on the first page? No. So what I teach people to do is, number one, you go to Google. You type in auto damage appraisal companies. You type in catastrophic appraisal companies or adjusting companies, whatever that term you're looking for is, or whether it's, local bakeries, doesn't matter. Whatever you're looking for as a B2B business, you go into Google, you use that. Then what do? You look on their website and go, oh yeah, this is somebody I want to apply for. If they have an application online, apply there. Doesn't matter if you don't even meet the requirements, apply. Then you go over to my favorite tool, LinkedIn. You type in that business name and you pull up A and B appraisal companies or whatever it is, and you click on their business profile. And LinkedIn's amazing. It'll show you all 12 employees that work there. So you click that hyperlink, all 12 employees that work at B&B appraisals. And then you find the recruiter, the operations manager, anybody you think that actually could potentially get you in contact with the right person. And you do personal messages to them, asking them how to get work or how to help them and be a part of their network. And boom, you've now introduced yourself. Do that 50 times, you're going to get work from somewhere. So that's where you start, though.
Yeah, that answers the definition of number 5 on how to be successful. That is hustle.
Mm-hmm.
That is hustle.
And that's all screen time. That's not even, you can do that at 3 a.m, 9 at night. It doesn't have to be a cold call during business hours. You're just getting the ball rolling, and that's going to get your name out there.
Yeah, that's just like completely ties into sports analogies where defense, right? Defense is just effort. You don't have to actually have a lot of skill. It's who wants it the most, who's hungriest. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think you're preaching anything that's actually outside of any other line. It's not rocket science. I think it's almost any field. Who's hustling the most? You can completely differentiate yourself from all of your competitors if you just hustle, just put in more effort. Yep. So I love that. That's that like really ties into, that's maybe it's a confirmation bias, but that really ties into my business philosophy. So let's go into teaching. IA path. Where did that come from?
Well, as a business, it was really just an idea. It was like I had a failed entrepreneurial business for a year. I was working another job that was funding it, but I spent over $20,000 and just completely bombed on a technological business venture of my own creation that probably wasn't a good idea in retrospect. And what I learned through that was I was horrible at identifying the problem. I didn't even know what problem I was trying to solve at the time. And I was just creating this cool business idea, but it didn't actually help anyone. It didn't actually solve a problem. I thought I was solving a problem, but I really wasn't. So I kind of went back to my roots and just started to make money again and went and started doing auto damage claims again in Denver. I was out in Denver and I just was having so much fun getting back into that after a long time away from doing field claims. And people started asking me, well, how do you get into this? What do how do you get started? So I was like, well, just go look it up online. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. And so I went and looked it up online and it was like, I couldn't find anything. And I knew the field. And I was like, this is a shame. This is a great business. Even if it was a side income for somebody getting started, this is an amazing business opportunity for them and career opportunity for them. And most people don't even know about it. And you go type it at Google and Google's empty. Like all I have is Indeed job listings for places to go look for work, but nothing really to train you up unless you spend $500 right out of the gate. No information. And I was like, okay, I like podcasting. Let's just start a podcast. I'll just start a podcast and I'll just talk for 5 minutes an episode about the industry. And that was it. That was the idea. It's like, I will just be someone who offers information. And so was
the podcast started before?
That was the training. Yeah, the podcast is what started it all. I didn't want to put any effort or time or anything in after my last failed business venture into a business. I was like, no, let me do claims, and then I'll just start this podcast and see if anybody even cares. But I knew, as you know, Nick, from starting podcasts, nobody listens at first. So I knew nobody was going to listen but I wanted to see if I even enjoyed it, if I felt like I could start getting a vision for it or had enough passion for it. Because I'm not crazy about cars. I'm not even crazy necessarily about my job. I'm crazy about the results that it's brought about or the freedom that it's brought about, but it's not the job itself. I can get this excited about anything that I think will really help somebody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that goes without saying, but I don't think a lot of folks that are listening to this probably understand it. Like, I'm not crazy about insurance.
Yeah.
I've said many times on many podcasts, I'm probably insurance's biggest critic.
Same here.
I like the outcome though, and I feel like I can make it better, or I should at least try. And so, that's the point with my podcast too. Is the same as yours. I like the outcome, and I want to tell a lot of other people, like, hey, there's a career here for you if you want it, and it's not a bunch of old white stodgy men sitting around a mahogany table making decisions. It's a little bit more exciting than that. So
absolutely.
So someone that signs up for your course, what do they get?
Well, so bridging from the last place, so they kind of get a picture of how this happened. This is not some company that was formed in a back room with this massive plan of this is how we'll train the industry or how we'll help somebody go start to finish. This was, what can I teach people? And so I started a course called Crash Course, which was the basics of auto damage appraising, not adjusting. I'm not an expert adjuster, but I knew auto damage appraising. I know how to look at a wrecked vehicle. That was what I knew, right? And I started with that course. And then I put it out. Nobody bought it. And it was fantastic failure, right? My wife loved it. It was a very good, humbling moment for me that continues to remind me every day that ultimately it's what God's going to do with what I do versus what I think I can do. But from there, I put it out on LinkedIn, and I just was steady on LinkedIn. I was hustling for no reason. Nobody was listening. And then a company contacted me and said, hey, can you do a hail course for us? We want 100 guys trained in 30 days. Can you do it and certify that they know what they're doing? And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, that's never been done like that before. In 30 days, you don't want me to create a course. You want me to create a course and train 100 people. So we did it. And we successfully pulled it off. And so we had our course that's now called Hail Score, birth from that. And that's kind of the origin of the courses. Was I created one out of thin air, spent a long time on it, nobody bought it. And then someone else was like, hey, that's really cool. Can you do it but with hail? And then a year later now, we're where we are with over $2,000 in training. And so that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, but that serendipity wouldn't have happened if you weren't hustling.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No, right? It never would have.
The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah. So to answer your question though, sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent, but I just really want people to understand that, I think there's a difference between, this is not a college that is perfectly crafted. This is a person pouring out his passion and his knowledge to you. So you'll see me stutter. You'll see me do all these different things. It's a real conversation like Nick and I are having. This is not, boring. This is my crazy ideas in a course. So what we actually are launching, Nick, and I was so excited that you reached out to do this here, and the timing just worked out perfect, is you asked what they're going to get if they come do training. What they're going to get is hands-on application, easy to apply principles, things that people can comprehend. And I got one, Nick, and then I'll actually explain, how it works or whatever. But I got an example. I can even share it through audio that someone could probably take and apply to their own, with their own knowledge that they already have, and come away going, I learned something on this podcast. So I came up with something called the iPath soda can rule. And one of the biggest questions new people who are estimating vehicles have is, how do I know if a panel needs replaced or not? Can it be fixed with Bondo? I don't know. I'm not experienced enough. So I came up with this soda can rule when I was just twirling on Crash Course. And I was like, how do you tell? How do I tell? And So if you take a soda can and you crinkle it, so just imagine you're popping your Pepsi can or Coke can in, and you're like, oh man, that's really damaged, right? But then you can blow in it and you can pop it back out, like, oh, it's back to its shape it was. Yeah, there's a little line here, but in a vehicle, we can paint over a line, but you actually restored that metal to its shape. Well, a panel is very similar, that if it's cut, like if you crinkle the can so bad that it cuts itself and it gets a really hard edges and lines, then you can't ever get that thing back to the shape it was. So if it's in doubt that you can restore it back to its pre-loss condition, like a soda can, you can it. So it's that simple. It's things like that that really give people the confidence to go, I can make a decision. Even if I'm wrong, I can make a decision because I have logic behind it. If that was my soda can, I couldn't fix it, so I'm going to can it right now.
I like it. That's a nice, simple rule of thumb that I try to do stuff very similar to that on a day-to-day basis. So
I have to, for me.
Yeah.
I got to have a way to make decisions.
Yeah. On more for my curiosity, your podcast. How do you get guests, and how do you do it?
I do it by the seat of my pants most of the time. But the first year
Just like
was
me.
yeah, exactly. So the first year was a lot of, let me just pick some random topics that people are asking. Google, right? Auto damage appraiser, and then see what Google comes up with, like salary. Okay, that's a good podcast topic. Let me talk about the salary of an auto damage appraiser and how that works, right? So I would do things like that. And it was like 5-minute segments. And then I went through a period of, 20-minute segments where I was doing it longer, more in depth, because people were like, I like it, but I want to learn more. So I was like, all right, let me do it longer then, more in depth stuff. And then this year, and I'll get to your curiosity question about how I do the podcast technically. This year we switched to an interview style, kind of like what you guys do, where I bring on IAs, and I call them independent adjusting heroes, people who have been successful, whether they're in 2 years, 20 years, doesn't matter, and interview them to let them tell their story. Because I felt like people hear enough from me. They need to hear that there's other people in this industry succeeding. It's not just about me. And so how do we do that? And so that has really made it, people I think resonate even more with it, hearing, oh, there's another guy just like me. It's not Chris who has the podcast doing it. It's this guy in Kansas. Great. I can do this. And then now I'm guessing you're asking for your sake about the technical stuff, right?
Yeah, you just talking into your iPhone, or?
Yeah, I do a phone recorder. I started doing Skype calls, recording Skype. It failed on me too many times. I got too angry. No, that doesn't work. And so I started doing phone recorder apps. And so I would literally call you up, Nick, and you'll hear it in my podcast. If you've heard a recent one from season 2, the phone rings, and then someone picks up and answers on the other line. Now, it's a little bit crafted that they know to answer like that, but they know I'm calling, right? But it's really, I'm picking up the phone and calling them to interview them. And then I just put it into Audacity, a simple Windows-based mixing system.
Do you happen to know the name of the recorder app?
Yeah. It's I think it's something as simple as a phone recorder, but let me look. Call recorder.
Call recorder. Okay, we'll put that on the show notes. People have asked me, how do you do the podcast? So
you could start so simple. You could just do that and call people, or get a voice recorder app and just record with your phone. I mean, my quality to start with was nothing. Sometimes it still has struggles, but mostly it's just doing the work.
I should get a panel of. I've recorded several podcast hosts. Abel Travis, David Wright, you. We should get a panel of that and just talk about podcasts. We don't even have to put it. We can each share it on our own channels. And for those that are interested in how that actually gets done,
because there should be more podcasts in this industry. This is a huge industry, billions and billions of dollars, and there really isn't enough podcasts or information out there.
Yeah, and what information is out there is difficult to get, and it's stodgy, formal. rather than informal and comfortable,
Yeah.
which is what you and I are trying to solve.
So Nick, have you, kind of a question for you, since we're on this tangent of other people doing it, have you, through INS Nerds and everything you guys are doing, have you started finding other people who are getting excited saying, oh man, I'm going to run with this, I'm going to do something in this industry as well, in the form of, kind of online information?
No, not exactly like that. I think it's because it's really challenging.
It is.
And the thing is, there's 3 of us at Insurance Nerds. And
you guys are rock stars, though. Like, I watch what you guys are doing, and I'm just like, ooh, wow, you guys really pulled that off.
I mean, it just can't be done by one person. And we have, we've opened up the site to allow guest authors. So we're giving them a forum. So there's a lot of help in the background, people that have been very, very helpful to us, volunteering their time and effort, writing articles, coming on the show like you, things like that. It couldn't be done by one person. So I think there are a lot of folks that are interested. I think one of the most interesting ones is my good friend, David Wright. He has a great podcast.
Sounds familiar. Which one is his?
Yeah, his is the Unreasonable. I'll figure it out. I'll look it up while we're talking. But he had wanted to do the podcast. Like I didn't encourage him to do it. He had wanted to do it himself. And after I got him on the show, we started talking about some of the technicalities of actually doing it. And he's so smart. He asked just a couple questions. The next thing I know, there's a podcast. Like he actually went out and did it, and he was a natural. Abel Travis is also a natural. I had nothing to do with that. He did that on his own, but he was also a natural. David's podcast is the Not Unreasonable podcast, and it's very good because he talks to reinsurance professionals. His last one is Fighting Against Weather Models with Judah Cohen, like technical stuff. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I listened to a few of his. I think we've spoken on LinkedIn some, and I think they're going to be coming, Nick, because I spoke with someone the other day, more people coming out of the woodwork that was like really passionate. She was passionate about travel, passionate about women and adjusting. And I was like, run with it. I can't relate with women. Completely. There's nobody out there doing that. Please.
Exactly.
So
we've tried, we've thought about it. We don't necessarily want to be like, quote unquote, a show for women or whatever. We have a slightly different mission that somewhat overlaps with that. Someone absolutely should run with that. And then my advice to anyone that's listening, if there's something out there that's interesting and nobody's doing it, go do it. That's the opportunity. That's what it looks like.
And even if somebody is doing it, do it, because it's going to be totally different when you do it versus when I do it. I'm talking about superheroes, and Tony Cañas is running around in Superman shirts. You might actually show up in a tie without the Superman shirt and feel totally different, and that's okay.
Yeah,
but
I'm going to show up in my Gronk New England Patriots shirt. That's how I'm going to show up. So
it's awesome. All right, sorry to take you on that tangent, but
that was great. That was great.
So, there's a great course that I took, because in the show notes before the outline, you kind of asked kind of how I started the podcast. And so I made note of it, is that I took a podcasting course, and I spent money to take that podcasting course. It's called, the podcast that they have is called The Showrunner, and they have a podcasting course. And I think it's like, I want to say it's like $600. And that was a big investment for me. I spent months and months agonizing over it, and I took it, and it put me completely at ease. And I felt like, okay, I can do this. So if it's something somebody's listening and like, I just don't want to do that on my own, I don't want to scour the internet for it, I don't have time to. Well, if that's something you really want to do, that may be something you want to check out. At least their podcast, The Showrunner.
Yeah, I'll put that on the show notes. Or you can do it my way, which is stay up till 2:00 in the morning the night before.
That's a hard road. I've done it, and you've done it, and we know better now. If someone else could do it another way, do it the other way.
There was nothing I could do to make it sound better. It was just terrible. This episode 1 was just atrocious. And it's our most listened to podcast by far. I mean, it's not even close. And it's the worst one. And so
nobody listens to my old ones. Nobody listens to my old ones.
I love it when someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I went on the road and I loaded your podcast and I just listened to them one by one by one by one. I'm like, wow, okay, so I'm like Stranger Things or
Yeah.
one of these Netflix shows
Binging.
that people are binging on. So that's fantastic. Getting back to IA before we go into the personal part of the show, how's technology going to affect it? I bet there are more than a few folks that are listening saying, yeah, but InsurTech, yeah, technology is going to basically remove those jobs. What do you say to that?
So yes, some jobs will be removed. And I would say, will we be automated out entirely? No. But it's going to change drastically. I don't want anybody to pretend that I don't think it's about to change, because I think in the next 5 years, it's going to look completely different. But if you look around, our entire world is changing so fast, you can't be amazed that you're shocked your job changes. If we have automated cars coming, who knows what that's going to look like, right? Not just in our industry, but in the world in general. People who used to make money as a photographer have lost their jobs and lost money. Why? Because we all have iPhones and can take great photos of a wedding ourselves, and some people don't want to spend that $700 on a photographer, whatever the price tag would be. But then there's other people who are photographers who are making way more money than they used to because they specialize in something. They specialize in weddings and certain types of photography, and they specialize in selling to certain groups of people. And so being an IA is going to change like that. You're going to have to specialize and at the same time diversify, because you don't know what's going to hit and what's actually going to change. But let's think about this, Nick, just in my instance, how much has changed from when I started. I write claims on a daily basis. I do a lot of remote writing. So people send me their claims, I write them, I send them back, right? So they send me photos and notes and all that fun stuff. And I write it from my sailboat anywhere in the US. And I couldn't have done that 10 years ago. So will my job be phased out? Maybe my job was phased out somewhere, but I have a different job that I like better, that I had more opportunity with and a better life. So this industry is changing, and the stats are showing that staff adjusters are being eliminated, and photo technology and independent adjusting is increasing to replace those staff adjusters. But they're both rising equally. It's not photo technology running ahead. It's equally. And that came from a CCC report, industry report. And I got that information from Ernie Bray of ACD, or Auto Claims Direct. So definitely link to him. He's an industry leader in understanding where the technology is going. But I had him on my podcast, and we talked in depth about this. And it's not changing the way people think it is completely. I think for the next decade, yes, it will be changing, but there's always opportunity. It's whether you're willing to, rotate with it, or whether you're willing to adapt with it.
Hustle.
Hustle. Right? That's right.
It all
That's
comes
right.
back down to hustle. You want to differentiate yourself? Just hustle. That's all you have to do. So
make it sound so easy. That's all you got to do is hustle. But it's the truth.
It's so easy. It's hard.
Yep.
Because you got to put the time and effort in, and you can't just sit around on Facebook all day. So I want to transition to you personally. We ask all of our guests, what books have been influential to you personally and professionally?
Well, there's not a lot of books out there about auto damage appraising. And even if there were, I wouldn't have found them before I got a lot of the knowledge that they would have held. So there's none of those on this list. I'm glad you gave me beforehand, so I had a chance to think about it. Because there's a few business books that have really influenced my thinking. It's not so much, yes, sometimes my tactics change because of it, but my thinking has changed about the way the internet works, about the way marketing works, some for the good. My wife would say some for the bad, because just like, she doesn't want me to be a salesman, and I don't want to be a salesman either. So it's that difficult balance. But two books in the marketing sector that just kind of explained why the internet is the way it is and why people do things the way they do marketing wise is .com Secrets and Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. And so if you're looking to sell something online, you're looking about how do people get sales on these online websites? Why do they do these weird tricks and upsells and all these different things? He's the one who kind of actually made it make sense. And then now I've been transitioning away from how he does it to my own way, but I understand why they do what they do now, right? So from the marketing side and getting your name out there, that's kind of the books that have really resonated with me. And then another huge one, and I hope you know this one, Nick. If not, you got to get it now, which is The Business Model Generation. And that book is just amazing for helping you visualize your business. Who's your customer? What channels are you trying to reach them at? That kind of thing. And really, they have a follow-up book called Value Proposition something. I don't even remember the whole name of the book. But
they have a follow-up to that one too.
Do they? I haven't even read that one. What's that one?
I forget the name of it. Just came out.
I'm going to have to find it. But though it, once again, influenced the way I thought about things, not so much exactly what I do, because I don't always run back to my business model and go, oh, does this make sense? But it changed the way I thought. And that's kind of the theme for the rest of the books throughout my life, which is more on a personal level about the way I think about the world. One is Folks, This Just Ain't Normal by Joe Salatin. And it's about the way we eat, about the way we sorry, my phone keeps going off. The way we eat, the way we live, the way we farm, all these different things. And it wasn't so much that it like villainizes people as much as it just said, I never saw the world that way and opened my eyes. Same with Ron Paul's Liberty Defined. I used to be huge into politics. Now I'm not. Just causes arguments, it seems, so I don't really care to anymore. But it really helped me see the world in a different way, even if it wasn't exactly the way I still see it. Just opened it that my perspective is not the only perspective, and it doesn't mean it's reality. And those books really shifted that worldview, so to speak. And then the last two are kind of in a different category, which is Andrew Murray's books on prayer. Really helped me in my relationship with God and with Jesus to really understand what it means to pray and to kind of, meditate more than just, oh, let me pray over my food. And, I still struggle like that with everybody else, but his books on prayer in the Bible have really influenced my spiritual side of my life.
We will absolutely put all of those on the show notes for anyone that wants to just link over. We'll do that for them. Okay, and then final question is, you're on a boat. You can go wherever you want, but that carries with it a lot of responsibilities as well. How do you stay effective and productive?
Well, it brings a lot of challenges to stay productive, but also just a lot of challenges. People are like, oh, it must be so serene on the boat all the time. And usually I can kind of shock them into reality about what it's like. And I love it on the boat. And some days are just perfect. And I'm like, this is what I live for. But other days it's just hard. But you imagine you're on a 37-foot boat. You have 2 kids and your spouse. You don't get away from each other. Hardly ever. So like I'm recording this podcast. My 2 kids are in the V berth of the boat, a few feet away from me with like 2 doors shut between us to try to keep it quiet enough to make this a good recording for you, Nick. And my wife's outside. So it's a whole group effort to do anything, right? To get water for the boat or whatever. So staying productive, in air quotes, laughing, right, is truly important. But really, I got to thank Tony, Canyas, for he put a thing out about bullet journaling. Yeah. And I have not done it full scale. Now I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'm going to learn all those little symbols and stuff. No way. But just having a little notebook that I do a little triangle and say, call with Nick, podcast interview, and these are the 5 things I got to get done today, that whenever I lose track of what I'm supposed to be doing, I can pick it up, hold it, and go, I scratched that off. I'm done with that. And I've kind of done a hybrid of that bullet journaling with John Nastor has a training of Hack the Entrepreneur about how to stay organized. And basically he uses cue cards to have like 5 of them for each day. And so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there's one big task every day and then a few subtasks that you have to get done. This is what matters in your business. And when you're done, you need to be done and walk away. And I have not mastered that because my wife will tell you I'm never done. I put too much on the list.
Great. I will actually get those some of those things on the show notes as well. I lied. Do have one more question. It's the Friday before the Super Bowl predictions.
Ooh. I seriously don't know who's playing. I assume the Patriots because I keep hearing the word Patriots. I have not watched a game this year, so who's playing? And then I'll offer a prediction.
New England Patriots versus the Philadelphia Eagles.
There's no doubt in my mind. I heard somewhere that Bill Belichick may be retiring, and I'm a firm believer that the NFL likes happy stories and that they pay people very much a lot of money to make happy stories. And I love the NFL for years. I used to watch like every Sunday, but just the last few years just have not felt it was what I needed to invest my time into. But I totally believe there will be a happy ending, just like Peyton Manning had his happy ending to Bill Belichick then, and he's going to win and ride off into the sunset and go be on Fox Sports or something and, talk about the games or whatever as an analyst. But definitely, there's no doubt Patriots are going to win, not just because they're better, but they are better, and because Bill Belichick's going to retire.
From your lips to God's ears. Fantastic.
I'm guessing you're a Patriots fan.
I agree 100%, except for Bill Belichick retiring. Let's hope not.
Oh, he's gone. Come on. What else can you do? Like, the dude's won everything so many times. He's had the best quarterback in history. If he stays around and it goes south, it's just going to be like Joe Montana coming back to the Chiefs. You don't do it. You just don't. Don't do the Michael Jordan come back to the Wizards. Just no.
Keep winning. Keep winning, baby. Keep winning. Chris, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your passion. We will put all of your information on the show notes in case anyone wants to get in contact with you or see your course or any of your book productivity recommendations. Thanks for taking time out of your day.
Absolutely. And so can I direct people where, if they're interested, where to go?
Yes, please.
All right. So IA Path, that's letters, IA, and then path, like a walking path, is the home for non-corporate success in the insurance industry. And if you're interested in becoming an adjuster, whether independent or as a staff adjuster, you can learn the basics and some of the advanced concepts through online learning with our courses. And we're super excited because in February, which is right now, we just launched what we're calling the League of IAs. And it's a membership where you pay $50 a month and you get access to over $2,000 worth of training that we have right now. And then we're going to be creating new content each month as well moving forward. But that way it's affordable to anybody versus charging $500 for one course. So just go to iapath.com.
Fantastic. My guest this week has been Chris Stanley of IA Path. Chris, thanks again.
All right, Nick, I appreciate it.
Take care.